much for joining this episode of the SoSu series. Today we'll be interviewing a dear friend of mine, Velines, who's a non-binary actor in the city. Their work is absolutely beautiful. I'm always thrilled whenever I get to see them on stage and very excited that I get to share their work and their thoughts, their art with you all today. So thank you for joining us. Welcome, Ty.
How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing all right today. How about you?
Great. I'm really grateful that you're here. Let's dig in.
Yeah. So
the first thing that I'd love to do, because I've gotten the chance to see you on stage, and it is unexplainable, but I'd love to take a second to explain your art to those who are watching and who aren't as familiar. So can you tell us what kind of art do you create? And I'm also curious about the art you create in your downtime.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, primarily, it is theater. I'm an actor. And within that, I usually focus on children's theater and also, theater for young audiences, and also theater that but theater that opens up a conversation. So I worked with a lot of theaters that do that bring you new ideas. So that's kind of my theater work. And then on my downtime, I really love to make music. Some of my background is in music, and also like to make digital art. So I'm kind of a digital artist. I DJ sometimes. What else do I write poetry? Creative writer. So, just anything that is artistic, I kind of do on my downtime. Like anything. If I'm not acting, I'm probably reading or making music, to be honest.
That's awesome. And that gives us an opportunity to appeal to all the different sides. So know that if you're interested in reading something, go to Ty. If you're interested in watching a play, go to Ty. Whatever it is.
Exactly. I'm there.
Awesome. The next question I have for you is, if you had to choose one word to describe your work or you as an artist, what would that word be?
That word would be blooming. So I say that because a lot of my work within, no matter what type of art I'm doing, is evolving. And it's always something that I think brings a new perspective to people's minds. Be it my personal perspective as a non-binary person, my personal perspective as a Black person, my personal perspective as a queer person, or my perspective as somebody who is going through changes in life, as a young adult not much of a young adult anymore, but, just going through the changes in life, like those types of perspectives, and maybe a different type of artistic perspective. Like when I DJ, some of the stuff that I add together are probably not songs that you've heard before. Like some of it's familiar, some of it's not, from different genres, house, you know what I'm saying? Like hip hop, some of it's just instrumental music that kind of genre bends. So I would say blooming and evolving. That's something that I cherish in any of the works that I do, because I think it's very important to be able to not just internalize, but be able to witness and hold space for new ideas and new, ways of thinking in life. Because it's more than just us here. There's so many different people and so many different cultures. Like once you learn about them, like your personal views expand and change. So I would say evolving and blooming.
Yes. And, it's interesting because when I think of the word blooming, I instantly think of life, and everything about the description that you just gave is a reflection of life. So I love that. That's awesome. Blooming. Okay. So right now inside of this quarantine, we are able to bear witness to even more. I mean, we're in 2020 where technology is at the forefront. We can, watch things and tune in on things at the flip of a phone. Phones don't flip anymore with the press of a phone.
Yeah.
So there's so much to draw inspiration from. So I'm curious to know what fuels your artistry.
Life. But more specifically, my feelings towards life, because I had a lot of feelings. I feel very deeply, and just sometimes, just in general, everything that we experience, especially as Black people in the world, like you don't have to turn on the TV to experience hard, quote unquote hardship. You don't have to turn on the TV to understand what it's like to be Black, because you are Black. Like you're navigating that already. And so to be able to, like, I don't know if divest is the right word, but to be able to like let it out, I have to write, or I have to, make music. I have to be able to get that feeling and put it somewhere else so that it's not consistently taking up space in my mind, because that can, hinder, I want to say, growth in terms of how we can deal with those things that we're experiencing. Because if you internalize it all the time, you don't really get to see how it's affecting you. So pushing it out and putting it on a piece of paper, or putting it on, putting online, or, having conversations with other people, it's, that's very important to me. So feelings, my feelings influence my work. My feelings influence, everything that I try to put into my work, because feeling is a lot. It's a lot of work.
It
in
is.
itself. And the world is very wild.
I always compare it to like background apps, like feelings and thoughts. Like they're all there. We still function properly. But if there's so many background apps functioning at the same time, we literally can, exactly. And something about being able to have that release of art allows us to clear a background app in a way that, it's just so beautiful. It's just, I love that. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the thing that makes theater different from film is that it's kind of a one-shot deal. You either catch the show or you don't. But my question is, if all of a sudden the whole world were able to see one project that you've worked on, that you've already worked on, the whole world could see it, what would that project be and why?
This would be a project that I did in college right before I jumped into the professional theater world when I was a theater student. I would say for colored folks. And this is actually something from the brilliant mind of Dr. Khalid Long, who is now a professor at Columbia College. He merged for Colored Girls by Ntozake Shange, and for Black Boys by Keith Antar Mason, which is not as well known throughout, anywhere, because I had never heard of it before. Not saying it's not well known, but a lot of people are like, I've never dug into that work. Maybe they've heard about it. He combined these two works and made it for colored folks. And I think the whole world should see it, just because of the brilliance of Blackness, number one. And to see how the past is not really the past. Like Ntozake Shange wrote that a minute ago now, and it's still relevant in terms of what some Black women are going through. And Keith Antar Mason wrote his not as long ago, but it's still relevant to what Black men are going through, Black folks are going through, Black people who are masculine of center are going through. It's something that I think everyone should see, because it's bringing, I don't want to say a narrative, but it's bringing stories, real life to your face. And it's making you see something that you probably don't even want to think about.
Yes.
In terms of what Black people go through. Even though we have and make space for joy, even though we are joyful people, we have fun, we are who we are, there is still this, I want to say, it's a weird dichotomy of like a taboo, but also it's also plain to see our pain. And it's like this is weird, because on one hand it's a taboo, and the other hand it's not, because we're seeing it on TV. We're seeing it on our phones all the time. So to have for color folks and to have it just here on a stage where you get to see life happening in not necessarily a bubble, but in a space where everybody hearts can beat at one time experiencing Black stories, I think that's very important. And it just, I don't know, it was just an amazing experience for me too. And also for my castmates, when we were back in school, we all had a beautiful, wonderful experience of even digging into the work and finding parts of ourselves that we had never even touched before. Like finding parts of ourselves that are like, here you go. Like, I'm not afraid to show you what this is. So here it is right on a slab and you better take it. You know what I'm saying? Not being afraid. So I think that for color folks, I'm sorry that it's not up now.
I mean, but hopefully it can get a new life to it. I think there's so often we don't get the opportunity to delve into these sides of us. But quite literally, our joy does exist with our pain. Yeah. And quite literally, our joy cannot exist without our pain and vice versa. So getting the opportunity to exist inside of that in a way that's real reflection of who we are, you know, from words that are from us. So I think that's beautiful. And I'm grateful that you said those texts, because I have always loved Ntozake Shange's work, and that, you know, made me fall deeper in love with theater. So I'm going to make sure to provide that in the description below so people can check out those two pieces. So thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Of course. The next question that I have is there any art form that you haven't tapped into quite yet, but you've always been interested in delving into?
Yeah, heck yeah. Painting. Yeah, I know you do a lot of painting. You do great, beautiful work. Like, I love it. And that's something that I always just, in the back of my mind, like, I got into drawing a while ago, very long time ago in high school, and got into, I don't know how to explain it, but like the structure and also the fluidity that is visual arts and also drawing and painting. I really want to get into that, because something in my heart is like, I just want a big old canvas and I want to just have paint and I want to just go at it and see what happens. Because I feel like that's literally one thing that I have never done.
Yeah. I think you should. I think the key to that is just getting something and having it lie around. You'd be surprised with what ends up coming to you. My favorite thing about art, visual art, is that it's such a private experience. And you know, you may create something that you never share with the world. It's private, it's intimate, it's in a space that allows it to be outside of the bounds of judgment. It is yours. And I think that you should. Absolutely. Awesome. You know, visual arts makes me super excited.
Yeah, as it should. Like, it evokes things that you literally, like, words can't come close. So like poetry, you know, it can say, you know, whatever it wants to say, but like visual art, man, like it is also a personal experience as like a person that is creating it, and also for people who are consuming it.
Yes. So, awesome. So I can't wait to check out your visual art coming soon.
Hey.
The next thing that I'd like to dig into is the movement. I think right now it's so beautiful what we're experiencing, and that beauty that I'm talking about goes direct parallel with what you said about joy and pain, right? To say that this movement is happening is beautiful can sound like a contradiction, right? Because the movement is happening simply because of our pain. But to me, I find beauty in it because people are rallying together. We're fighting. We're fighting for what we want. We are demanding what is owed. And I do think that it's a beautiful uprising. So I'd love to know, what are your thoughts on this movement? What is this about? And even more specifically speaking, for those who are not actively in it, just what for you is this movement about?
Yeah. Well, you said it's hard to break it down and boil it down to a word for me, because I'm like, okay, got to be this, and this. But I would also say that it's beautiful, and I think that it is about the truth. Like, it is literally bringing the truth to your front step, because now that we all have the time to look at our phones. We're always connected in tuning in to, I would say, virtual life. Now is becoming meshing with real life. It is presenting you with a truth that a lot of people, and I'm going to rephrase that, a lot of white people like to sweep under the rug. Just the truth that Black Lives Matter, regardless of what your system is trying to say, regardless of what you're trying to hide, regardless of your own ability to have a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Black lives matter, all of them, all Black lives matter. And to be able to see that in real time and not see it as an afterthought. Because before, you know, when the movement first started in 2013, the hashtag Black Lives Matter, started by Black queer women, you know, it was kind of like an afterthought for a lot of people. And it wasn't like something that people really took seriously. So to see it have grown across the country, have actual chapters that are giving back to their own communities,
Yes,
to have actual chapters that are, you know, organizing, always organizing, to see that come to bloom into what's here right now in 2020. I mean, it is beautiful because now there's no, you can't hide from it. And to be able to say and see people, as you said, come together. People have been protesting, well, uprising since March. Like every single day there has been an uprising happening across the country. And it is something that allows us to see the power of unity, to be able to understand our place in it, because not everybody is able to be out on the streets. But that also shows you what activism can be. You know, it doesn't always have to be you are out there on the streets, you know, with your friends and your family. Sometimes that means you're sharing ways to support different organizations, you know, on social media. Sometimes that means that you are sharing your own thoughts about it with your friends and family at home. Sometimes that means finding articles, finding clips, finding things that are in the virtual world on YouTube, on, you know, what have you, like finding those things and being able to disseminate information that way, because that's also important, to be able to have information about what's going on. Like, to be so connected, but also kind of disconnected because of the pandemic is like a very interesting experience, especially right now. So I find it to be beautiful because like it ain't no going back. There's no possible way we're going to go back, because now all of this is being recorded and documented, and it's going to be there. Like there's no getting around it. So I think that the movement is about the truth and about multiple truths. So.
Yes. And now we have the truth that everybody can participate, everybody can join in, regardless of where you are, what you can do something, which I'm so grateful that you mentioned that. So, you know, my question is, because we've been fighting this fight for a long time. You mentioned the fight this year, but realistically speaking, the fight's been happening since the civil rights movement. Realistically speaking, the fight's been happening since before that. So my question is, why do you think this is happening right now? Why are these injustices still occurring in 2020?
Well, you know, it's partly because of the system that's in place that allows it to happen, that is literally built to function as it is. This is not like this is something that's not it's functioning the way that it was meant to function. And number two, because of the internal workings of people in positions of power, of white men in positions of power, and that's pretty much it, to be quite honest. Like that to me is the system. That's it. Because if your mind is really wrapped up in this system as it is, which was built on the backs of Black people, built on the backs of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, built on the backs of people of color, to be quite honest, pushing them to the side and to the margins, to be able to stand up where you are now, like, that's why it's still here, because it's ingrained into our society. And we have seen over decades that no matter the amount of saying, listen, if the person is not going to listen, and they don't think that anything that is happening right now needs to change, it's going to stay the same. So I think that it is what it is, because a lot of our policies that we don't necessarily have 100% control over are still running as they should. And people in positions of power are still having the same mindset of their grandfathers and their great-great-grandfathers and their great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers, who were the people that kind of forced their way into this country. Not even kind of, like,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like that the same mentality lives in a lot of white people.
Absolutely. I hear that. And, you know, I heard what you said about, you know, there are certain things that we can't change, right? And it's easy to look at the things that we can't change and feel like we are helpless. But what I've seen in this movement, what I've seen from my people, period, what I've seen from my ancestors is that we are not helpless. So my question to you is, what is one actionable step that anybody watching this right now can take to help aid in the movement, to help aid in the things that we are fighting for? So what's one actionable step that someone can take today to make a change?
Yeah, I would say literally committing to accountability, like committing to holding yourself accountable. Like, I think that is a very, I'm not going to say easy, but it is an actionable step to be able to say, I'm going to hold myself accountable for the ways in which I perpetuate racism, for ways in which I perpetuate sexism, for ways in which I perpetuate systemic racism. Like, where am I sitting in all of this? Where am I sitting in? Am I complicit? Am I, you know, I think self-examination is really important, just as I said before, because the mentality is there, like the mentality that nothing is wrong, the mentality that nothing needs to change. Like, I think a really great first step is to really question how, where, and how you are playing into the harm of marginalized people. Because sometimes, because it's not always easy. That's the thing. It's not always easy to spot. So to be like right off the bat, oh, well, I'm not doing that because I'm, you know, donating here and I'm donating here. But like, money is great. And like, it really will help. It will help the movement. I will tell you that. But if we are going to progress further than where we are right now, we have to, not even just we, but a lot of white folks are going to have to change their mentality. They're going to have to examine themselves. They're going to have to examine where they have power, and where they can help in terms of serve, not even just help, but serve their community, and not just their immediate community, but the community at large. Like, that's, you know, that reorganize your mind to understand what a community is. Like, reorganizing your mind to understand what it means to keep Black people safe, to keep marginalized people safe. Like, it's about, like Gil Scott Heron said, the revolution will not be televised. Like, it's internal. It's internal. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And we, you know, Black people, marginalized people, are not the issue, because we are not the ones that are in here making the policies. We are not the ones that have, we haven't inadvertently built this country, but we are not the ones that are upholding the racist ideals, the sexist ideals that are happening. Like, that's not us. So
it's important. That accountability, taking the time to be accountable. And it's not easy, but it's important. And the things that are worth it are not easy, but it's worth it to go through the struggle to get it, you know, and holding ourselves accountable, because the more we do it, the more the folks around us will do it. So now that we've talked about accountability, let's get into this industry, right? I think what's happening right now is really interesting, because there's a certain amount of accountability that is being called for within our own community. We are seeing a movement happening here within our own community, within our own DC theater scene. So my question to you on this is, what's your take on what's happening right now in the city with the theater scene?
Yeah, with the theater scene, my take is about time. And not saying that it has not happened, because we've had these conversations with each other, you know, even with people who are in positions of power in theater. We've had these conversations with them, but it is about time that they cannot ignore it. You know, it is about time that they listen. It is about time that it's here. Just as, you know, our other movements and uprisings that are happening that you can't ignore, it is about time. Because for too daggone long, I'm telling you, it's like to have to just go in every single day and try to advocate for yourself, and people are not listening to you. It's like, it's tiring. You get tired. And I know for me, after a while, I was just like, oh, this is like, I'm burnt out. Like, I can't even focus on the work that I want to do, because this is what I have to go in here and have to school you on this stuff that you have years, and you have resources and you have not used them to school yourself. Like, I have to do it. So I it is about time, and I'm glad that it's happening because it's been an interesting, trying time, you know, as being Black and non-binary in the community. Like, it has. So I'm very glad that it's happening. I'm glad that we have space for it. Like,
I think what you said, I mean, that goes back to accountability. Right now, we're seeing people asking for accountability from these theater spaces. And it's interesting to want to be, how do I say, not accommodated, but it's difficult to advocate for yourself, right? And advocate for the ways in which you fall into a marginalized community when there's barely any visibility for that community in the first place. And I think right now, this is about visibility and being able to say that I am here. I am here whether you see me, because whether you see a reflection of yourself in me, we are here. So absolutely. So going off of that, I'm curious, what is your experience with injustice and inequality as a Black non-binary artist here in the theater community?
Woo, that one. Oh man, I have over the past 5 years have felt an experience like erasure in terms of the wholeness of who I am. So in in Black spaces in theater, you know, earlier on, there was kind of an erasure of who I am as a non-binary person. And then in the queer spaces of theater or theater that is supposedly queer friendly, there was no room for me to be who I am as a Black person. So literally having to navigate, I felt like two different worlds, and not just it's literally in the world for me too. Like, wasn't the first time that I experienced that. I experienced that in the college that I went to, a predominantly white institution. The same thing. It's like there's only space enough for one of your identities, even though one of them is something I can't take off. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's been trying. It's been really difficult because it's like, okay, if I'm not schooling you on why you can't say that, you know, about the experience of the vast experience of Blackness, then I'm here having to explain to you what these, you know, what my pronouns are and why, you know, use them and why you can't say those things about this in the queer community and that. And like, it's been difficult because it's like either one or the other. And I can't necessarily, you know, place all the blame on the spaces that I've entered into, because I think it's just the outside world that seeps into these spaces that just didn't allow for the vastness of who I am and who many people are. You know, it's like you have to be fit into a nice little perfect box to be able to go about your business, to be able to fit in. And that is my experience of like having to chop off part of myself in order to be palatable, to be quite honest. And in order to go along. Because even when I have spoken up about some things, like, you know, you do receive backlash. It could be overt, it could be covert, you know what I'm saying? Like, but either one of those things, like, it does stunt your ability to do your best work. And that's something that I found over the years is like, I haven't been able to do my best work because all of me is not really allowed to be in the room.
Yeah, if I want to pour my all into something, but only a portion of me is allowed, if only pieces of me are allowed through the door, if I have to exist as smaller versions of myself to be able to be welcomed in this space, how can I create a full version of the thing I'm trying to work on? Absolutely. And I mean, the hope is that this awareness, right, that's the first step, will create a space that welcomes all the versions of ourselves, all the pieces, because realistically speaking, if I can't be this piece of myself while I am here, I am not me while I am here. So the hope that we can create a space where we can be exactly who we are. Okay. So exactly. I mean, going off of that, one question I'd like to ask now is, what's one aspect that you feel needs to be addressed in order to make the DC theater scene a safer space for BIPOC artists? And just to clarify, I do say BIPOC because it's important to include every person of color, Black, Indigenous, but also specifically Black, because we are Black people. What's one aspect that needs to be addressed in order to make the DC theater scene a safer space for BIPOC, women, and non-binary artists?
I think the answer to that, well, I know the answer to that is leadership. Is leadership of different theaters. Not just your artistic directors, but who's on your board. That's something to really recognize, because you allow those people into your spaces and you allow them to influence how you run things, because they are the people that are funding you. It starts to get a little muddy, because it's kind of removed from the actual artists that are inhabiting your space. Because from personal experience, having done a lot of, the first reads or with the board, seeing a lot of the people that are on the board are older white people, older white men and women and men. And some of the things that I have experienced and have heard and have been told from those folks are, a little bit of microaggressions, you know what I'm saying? But maybe something that they are not aware of themselves, but it is ingrained in them. It's ingrained in, how they grew up. And so being able to take a look at your leadership, take a look at your board, take a look at who is the artistic director of this theater, what works are we putting on, and how is my face being associated with that? Like, am I inviting the right people into the space? Am I taking up space? Like, I think it's really important to think about how it's not enough to invite Black, Indigenous people of color to the table. Like, at this point, it's not enough. Like, we need Black, Indigenous people of color to be leaders, because they already are. It's not that they don't exist. They already exist. Yeah. It's to put them in put them in those positions and stop trying to, for lack of a better word, gatekeep, because it's like gatekeeping this, the way theater should be run. And it's like, okay, well, we're here now, and we see where that's gotten us. We see how far that's gotten us, and we see how a lot of stories that are meant and told to Black people, meant and told for Black people, are being consumed by a lot of white audiences. And it's like, we're putting ourselves on the line for white audiences to come up to us after shows and be like, well, I didn't understand this part, and oh well, I like saying stuff that's, for me, things that are just like, wow, very out of pocket, like things that just put it out there. Some of them have said some racist stuff, but understanding the effects that has on your actors, understanding the livelihoods of your actors, understanding the livelihoods of Black, Indigenous people of color who do a lot of beautiful work here. So leadership, because they themselves, who are in position of power right now, don't necessarily know how to create safe spaces and be able to maintain them. And so I think that leadership should be shifting right now. I think it should be changing. I think a lot of Black, Indigenous people of color should be hitting it, because they're brilliant within themselves. So, it's going to stay the same if we're functioning and working in the same ways. And that starts at the top.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've said so much, and it's a lot easier to create a safer space when the people on the board are a reflection of the people who need that safe space to be created for, Right. And the numbers from episode 1 are a clear reflection of the absence of not only people of color, but the absence of women, not only women, but the absence of non-binary artists. Yeah. And those numbers really do break it down from that other side. And see, if we look at the beautiful art that's being created with the board as is, with the leaders as is, imagine what would be created if the board was also a reflection of our community as a whole. Right. And that's what I'm interested in. And I agree with that completely. And like you said, they're out there. And it's not a matter of, them not coming to the positions. It's a matter of, are they being sought out? So absolutely. So, we're already getting into it. My question now, after we've discussed all this, given a reflection of where, what we're experiencing now in the movement inside of the DC theater scene, the things that you feel you've seen as a non-binary person of color and an artist in the scene. My question is, what is one actionable step that someone can take right now, today, to start making the DC theater scene a safer space for BIPOC, women, and non-binary artists?
Yeah. To be the radical person that I am, I say, as I said before, shifting of leadership. Like, I think that is wholeheartedly possible right now. I think it's wholeheartedly possible to advocate for that too. Like, if you are not on those boards right now, if you're just a patron, if you are, a lover of the arts, being able to advocate for a shift in leadership. Not only that, being able to support Black, Indigenous, people of color who are playwrights, because they are out there, being able to seek them out, being able to expand your knowledge in the DC theater scene, also being able to get out of, I want to say, your immediate theater community, because I know there are pockets. Like, it is a DC theater scene, but I know a lot of people visit, we're going to go visit this one theater. That's our home theater. But I think to be able to push yourself to visit theaters like Gala Hispanic Theater, you know what I'm saying? Like, being able to donate to Gala Hispanic Theater, being able to go to Theater Alliance and be able to see a show, you know what I'm saying? Like, being able to go to theaters that are not just in your immediate surroundings, I think is also so important. And also seeking out, I want to say new plays. I was going to say the New Play Exchange, because, like, looking at new works too, because the new works that are coming out by people who are queer, by people who are millennials, as they say, by people who are, people who exist in this in the spectrum, sometimes, marginalized people, like, being able to consume that type of theater and not always have to rely on your own theater's presentation of work to be able to expand your mind of what theater could be. I also think that is an actionable step. And also just having conversations. Have a conversation. Talk about, like, what you would like to see. Like, talk about with each other, like, brainstorm yourself what you could do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not here to give you all the, all the answers or anything, but it's like being aware and again, holding yourself accountable for and about the vast community that you live in. Like, just that's plain and simple. And also, again, advocating for a change in leadership, advocating for a shift in leadership, and advocating for more works that are by marginalized people, because that deserves to be on stage, that deserves to be supported, and our stories deserve to be heard. And listened to and taken seriously, and not just consumed for entertainment.
And that excites me. I really appreciate. I really appreciate being able to hear you say not only actionable steps, but you give the resources. Like, in that little section alone where you were saying what steps you feel people can take now, you cited maybe 3 or 4 things, 3 or 4 specific companies, specific, venues, outlets that people can go to right now. And that is what I appreciate, providing people with the tools to not only, learn, but also the tools to do it themselves. And that is important. And, the numbers don't lie. Right now on Broadway, the shows that are being produced, only 1.6 of the only 0.16 of the characters, I believe, were identified specifically as non-binary. So let's get some of that reflection into the game. Okay, so we're running out of time, but the important thing of the hour, now that everybody's gotten a chance to spend some time with you, which I'm grateful for, I'm sure that they're grateful for, let us know how they can support you now.
So you can support me through Cash App or Venmo at Velines, VALIONS. Yes, that is a great way, especially now that we are in a pandemic and, as a theater artist and as an artist in general, I do little tech stuff on the side, you know what I'm saying? But it's still very, it's still very limited in what I can do and how often I can do it and how much I can do. So that is a great way to support it. Also, think about them actionable steps. That's also another way you can support is think about those actionable steps. Think about the ways in which you can shift and change your inner workings, and think about how some of the things that we have seen and consumed over the course of our lives, maybe some of that stuff is not necessarily true about marginalized people, and see the ways in which you can serve your community and not just your immediate community. As I said before, seeing the ways in which you can actually support marginalized people, support Black, Indigenous people of color, holding yourself and holding your family members and holding your friends accountable. That's another way you can support. Like, be committed to doing the work. Be committed to doing the work. I think that is absolutely a perfect way to do it, because we're trying to shift and change. Not we're trying to, we are shifting and changing. And I hope that folks are allowing themselves to shift and change too, for the better.
Yes. Well, I'm super, super grateful for this today. This was super awesome. I hope that people have been able to open their hearts and their minds to what you're saying and understand that this is your journey that you're speaking on. That's also reflective of the journey of so many of us. So I'm really grateful that you've joined us today. And hopefully people have gotten a chance to listen fully, listen wholly, and that they feel pushed and moved to take the learning into their own hands. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of the SoSu series. Again, I really hope that this makes you feel empowered to learn more, because learning is our power, whether we're learning through conversations or whether we are the initiator of our learning. Say all that to say, Ty provided so many awesome resources. Know that you can find that in the description box below. Be sure to be informed and share that information with somebody else, because that sharing is what's going to make this whole world a safer space for all of us. Because at the end of the day, I'm rooting for everybody, and everybody Black. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Can't wait to see you next time on the SoSu series. In the meantime, don't forget to speak out and speak up. Thank you so much.